Good morning and welcome. My name is Michael Millar, and I am with the Real Estate Communications Group. Along with the Illinois Real Estate Journal and the Real Estate Publishing Group, we produce this event. This is the 10th annual Commercial Real Estate Forecast Conference. Time certainly flies. Attending today, for registered for today, are over 1,000 people. And I'm glad to tell you, since this is a forecast, that this takes us back to pre-recession levels. So that must mean either that you want to hear the speakers, or you feel real good about the market, or hopefully both.
It's my pleasure to introduce the headliners of this program. A fireside chat between two of the largest names in real estate. If they could come up at this time, Mr. Zell and Ms. Debra Cafaro.
We want to start with just some basic overview questions for Sam about the real estate market. In general, where do you think we are in the market today, in the commercial real estate market writ large in the United States? And what do you see as the largest near-term risks and opportunities?
I think that we're in a position right now that I think is somewhat obfuscated. Somebody in 1990, I gave a speech at ULI, and I ended the speech by saying that you had to stay alive until 95. And that became kind of a mantra for the industry. And then, I don't know, about a year ago or a year and a half, 2 years ago, somebody said, well, what's your mantra now? And thought about it, and I said, you gotta come clean by the end of 13. And what I'm talking about is that, we've had a whole series of adjustments, pretend and extend, all kinds of things that have basically kind of kicked the can down the road and deferred facing reality. I think the result of which is that the real estate industry looks better than it is, and that there's a significant amount of restructuring, recapitalization that are going to have to occur in the next couple of years. Kind of time has run out, and so I think we are going to see that. I think, and more than likely, I think dilution is the solution, meaning that
You got two mantras in 5 minutes.
That's true, yeah. Sorry, I was not trying to be mantra, but I think that there's just an enormous amount of commercial real estate that's significantly over leveraged, has benefited from both pretend and extend and extraordinary low rates on the debt. So both of those have deferred reality. At the same time, real estate, when it's all said and done, is all about supply and demand. And effectively, since July of 2007, we have had little or no supply in any discipline other than maybe apartments. And even apartments we haven't seen new construction equal to those number of units that are destroyed every year in fire and rehabilitation, etc. So I think that overall, we are still in a pretty weak demand scenario, but I think the weak demand could be a lot worse for us if it weren't for the fact that there's no new supply. I also think that there's very little likelihood that we will see any significant new supply in the next 24 to 36 months. The basics of real estate are that the cost is still significantly higher than the rates justify. Land, which is the accordion in the development business, to some extent, come back in line, but I'd say that there's significant lack of reality in that part of the business as well. So I guess what I would say is that we're in a position of transition. I think that the quote-unquote shocker of 08, 09 is still having its impact, and it's all about demand.
So how do you reconcile, so you have conflicting signals in the market, how do you square the circle and decide how to move forward if you're an investor, which you are, or a lender, or a REIT CEO, or anybody else in this business?
I think, Debbie, there's been times in my career where my perception was that you ought to just buy everything you can. So, in 90 and 91, when we were playing Grave Dancer, we literally bought everything.
At 25 cents on the dollar?
Whatever, yeah.
Right.
But, it was not a hard decision to make. When we eventually went public with equity office, making residential, and equity lifestyles, at that particular time, it was a no-brainer. And you just added bulk and scale to your business, which ultimately led to additional liquidity. The opportunities are, I guess you could say, linear. In other words, I think there are always transactions. There's always opportunity. There's always unique situations that are different from everything else. And that means that there are opportunities, but as opposed to adopting some broad philosophy, I think the only thing you can do in this kind of an environment is pick your spots, have a lot of patience, and any period of time that you do nothing is not necessarily dead.
I have not been following that mantra. I will say that. So let's talk about if there are no broad, it's a green light buy, it's a red light sell, but we're in that middle period where you pick and choose your investment opportunities, and we'll talk about how to capitalize those investments as well. But let's use that as a starting point, really, to talk about some different sectors. And so let's start with retail, which is an area that you had been in the past, but you haven't really played much in recently. Any thoughts on the retail sector?
I think the result is that retail, more than any other form of real estate, has a very serious obsolescence factor. I think that overall disposable income in the United States has certainly modified in the last few years, and it's very hard to imagine that we're going to see a growth in retail when you've got this much supply out there and this much obsolescence.
I do think we're over retail, even as a consumer, I would say, even as a
And that's despite the fact that we built no retail.
Recently.
And not since 07.
Yes.
So it's 5 years later, we built no retail. And yet we have, 10 or 11% vacancy in mall shops.
Going now to areas a little bit near and dear to your heart, obviously the sale of equity office at the peak in the market was one of the greatest transactions of all time, and actually is working out okay for Blackstone too, which is, it's not as well as it did for you, but...
Well, it's working out fine for Blackstone. The people Blackstone sold
exactly.
to all got buried without exception.
So one of the greatest transactions of all time in real estate, maybe in commercial business. But now we're seeing you invest in a partnership in 200 South Wacker, so another small office investment. Not small, over $100 million,
but it's small.
Yeah. What are your thoughts about that?
It's very simple. How much did it cost? How cheap was it?
Yes.
And with the terms and conditions unique enough to justify our investment. I mean, do we invest in 200 South Wacker and we think that the Chicago office market is going to start burning up? Unlikely.
It's a little bit better though than it was when you bought it.
Yeah, I'm sure. A little bit better. Okay. But, you know, little bits don't necessarily make for solutions. But when it's all said and done, we bought 200 stuff last year because it was very cheap and made sense. My prognosis for the overall market is at best, you know, even and probably negative. But that doesn't mean, that's the point I tried to make before, that doesn't mean that there aren't individual situations that lend themselves and are very attractive. The problem is there aren't very many of them.
Yeah, most people believe that the demand, going back to your comment that demand really is driving everything, which I agree to. But there doesn't seem to be real growing, robust demand for office, even in the major markets. Do you want to comment on that?
Well, I mean, you know, it's real simple. We're in the middle of a downsizing of our economy and a downsizing of our world. In the United States, the average number of square feet per employee is something like 240 square feet. In Hong Kong, it's 90. And in the rest of the world, it's generally somewhere between 90 and 240. So the first thing I can tell you is that there's an enormous potential supply that come into the office market as people downsize and hotel and do all the things to reduce their real estate costs. Second of all, you know, again, you got to focus on the word demand. You know, there are many multinational corporations in the United States. We have more employees overseas today than they have domestically. And in the end, office space is dependent on employment and growth. And so far, we haven't had any employment growth. We haven't had any growth.
Okay, we'll get to politics in a minute.
It starts with, I think that I've always been a man of my word. I don't think anybody has ever come to a meeting with me and afterwards left and said, what do you think he meant? You know, and so I think that, you know, clarity, I hope principle, I hope somebody who was given the opportunity that I was in, you know, and I think, you know, we talk about a lot of different things, but, you know, being there when it happens, you know, is what creates the opportunity. I mean, you know that I was involved in the origination of your company.
Yes, you did.
And,
People know this.
yeah, and, but the point is that I was there, okay, and somebody asked my advice, and I gave them what I thought was the right direction, which in your case and for the whole company turned out to be great. But the point is that I want people to think that I thought about things, I reflected on it, I had a very global view as opposed to a narrow view.
Yes, absolutely.
And I guess I would end by saying that I'm a great believer in the